Welcome to the 40th anniversary celebration of the founding of Caldwell Securities Limited. My name is Brendan Caldwell. Thank you for joining us. For a few minutes, I'd like to tell you how and why our firm came into being. As most entrepreneurial organizations do, our firm started with the idea of its founder. Our founder and chairman is my father, Tom Caldwell, who worked in the 1960s and early 70s in institutional sales for some of Canada's and indeed the world's largest brokerage firms. After about a decade of doing that, though, he felt that he would get much more satisfaction and joy helping people with their own money because they actually cared personally about the results. His vision was to create a firm where people could go to discuss not just this or that stock, but their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and to be able to talk with an advisor who could help them achieve those. To that end, in 1980, he bought a seat on the Toronto Stock Exchange, hired our late friend Paulette Vasiliou to organize the office, and on January the 12th, 1981, he walked across King Street to the 35th floor of the TD Centre. My dad wanted advisors and their clients to be working toward a common goal. That is why the main thrust of our business has always been investment management. He wanted advisors who would not just represent the firm to the client, but the client to the firm so that their needs and concerns were addressed. Which is why we started our mutual funds in the 1980s to enable clients to have access to professional management, whether they had millions of dollars to invest or if they were starting with a monthly contribution plan to build up their savings. Over the past 40 years, we've seen a lot of changes to our firm. Our team has grown to over 60 professionals in 5 offices, from which we look after 3,000 real people, their families, the charities and organizations they support, their places of worship, and the mutual companies that insure their farms. There have also been many changes to the investment industry. Almost all the firms that existed when Caldwell was founded have now passed into memory, or into the banks. And as for the changes to the world, including the one that we are living through right now, there have been too many to mention. But it is worth noting that over 40 sovereign countries have been created or gained their independence since our independent investment firm was founded. Throughout it all, we've had the privilege of living out my dad's initial vision. We have worked with families for years, which have turned into decades, and clients who have turned into friends. I'm a latecomer to all this, joining the firm in the summer of 1995 from one of the big banks. Over lunch, just before all this virtual world began, one of my clients described me as his best friend. This I consider to be one of the great honors of my own career, and a testament to the kind of firm that my father foresaw and that we together have created. Thank you to all who have entrusted their families and their fortunes to the care of our firm. It is a trust that we take seriously and for which we are grateful. Now, my friends, I hope that you enjoy the evening. I certainly plan to, as we see whether my dad can create a meal as well as he created a company. Blessings to you all.
Hello, my name is Angela Sturpey, and I've had the privilege of working with a group of talented investment professionals and loyal clients like yourself for over 30 years. I have personally had the opportunity to assist many of you, whether through our front office or back office services. As the CFO and a director of the firm, I wish to extend a sincere thank you. Without our client support, we could not do what we love doing every day. This is a celebratory event for our firm, and we are pleased that you could join us. We could not have achieved this 40th anniversary milestone without you.
Hello, I'm Tom Caldwell, and I'm chairman and founder of Caldwell Securities. It's amazing how quickly 40 years has gone by. It's also amazing in that period of time the number of events we've seen, from 18% interest rates to financial collapse to wars, terrorism, schisms in America, pandemic. It's stunning what that period of time has seen and witnessed. Hopefully that makes us better investment advisors as we go forward as well. I think over that period of time, I really have to look back and be grateful for our clients who've stayed with us for so many years. Many were in second generation, some in third generation. We're grateful for our clients. They've been wonderful, supportive, and hopefully we've been helpful to them in their financial goals. I also want to thank the wonderful people that have joined me. When I started with myself and the secretary, and bit by bit, people came and joined us. And we've had some truly outstanding individuals and still have in our firm. And many of our people have been with us 25, 30 years as well. So they tend to come and stay, so that's something to be grateful for. That experience it can't be measured. I'd also like to thank my wife, Dorothy, who, when I started this firm 40 years ago, we required pledging our house, borrowing money to get capital to make it go. And that was a big risk for my wife as we were married with 2 young children. And it was a real leap of faith on her part as well. So as they said in the old song, you get by with a little help from your friends. I've had wonderful support, and I literally thank God for the period of time we've come through, the events we've not only survived, but the events we've also capitalized on for our clients. So thank you. All the best.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Namofsky, Vice President Marketing with Caldwell Securities Limited, and I have been with the firm for 23 years. Now, since we're all self-isolating and social distancing, virtual events have become the norm in our society, which is why we decided to celebrate from the comfort of your home, actually your kitchen. And cooking and eating food has typically been a bonding experience, which in turn triggers wonderful memories of the past. And this is why we all gather for family dinners, especially special celebratory dinners, and they all create a memory. Today we hope that you will experience a comfortable, delicious, and memorable meal with your family when we're finished creating one of our chairman's favorite meals. Now, we sent you a list of ingredients ahead of time, so please have your ingredients nearby. So get ready to cook with our chairman, Thomas Caldwell, and Chef Kyle McClure, executive chef at Vantage Venues. Chef Kyle is Ontario born and raised, and a strong connection to northern communities and love of nature has inspired his approach, always using fresh and local ingredients. So let's begin, because I'm hungry.
Hello, I'm Tom Caldwell, and I started Caldwell Securities about 40 years ago, as a matter of fact. I never dreamed when I started this firm that I'd end up in a cooking show 40 years later. But I'm here with Chef Kyle from Vantage Venues, and he and I are going to cook some spaghetti bolognese, one of my favorite dishes. We're socially distancing, so I don't have to do any work. We were just joking before we started that my job is just to make smart aleck comments, same as I do at home when my wife is cooking. So, Chef Kyle, I'm really looking forward to this, so away we go.
Well, and I'll feel right at home with the smart aleck comments because my wife likes to do that with me too, so it'll feel like I'm just cooking at home, so we should have some fun.
Terrific.
So yeah, what we're going to do today is just our little rendition of spaghetti bolognese. Now there's a lot of different ways that we can do it, but with the ingredients that I had and the feel that I thought we were going for, we're just going to do it in this specific way, but there'll be other, and as we go on, I'll give you guys hints, and everybody who's watching hints on other things that you can add to it if you feel like you want, or things that you could omit if you don't want to have them. So hopefully we have some fun doing that.
Terrific. By the way, I do admire Chef Kyle's courage in doing this. My idea of cooking is using the toaster. So it's just as well I'm staying a distance here to let you work your magic.
Okay, well, it's one thing that I'm comfortable with, so hopefully I can show you how to make a good bolognese that you'll enjoy. So I think the first thing that you want to do is you want to get your water started, because you want your water to come to a nice boil. Now, a secret when cooking all pasta is you want your water to taste like salt water. So that way, when your noodles come out or your pasta comes out, it's nice and seasoned. So the salted water is doing a lot of the job for you, because your noodles that you're incorporating into your sauce are already going to taste really good because they have that nice salty flavor. So it should almost taste like the ocean. So that's...
Well, that fits with me. I'm not supposed to have that much salt, so that way I'm not having salt, but I am having salt.
Perfect.
That's a way of cheating, actually.
That's a good way of cheating. It's perfect. So I'll dump in quite a bit. And honestly, the way that I test it, and maybe people at home won't like doing it that way, but I'll actually take a spoon, I'll stir it around, and I'll take a spoonful of it and taste it to see if it's salty enough. Now, I know salt water seems gross, but at least that's at least the way that I can tell if I think there's enough salt in that water.
Right.
And like I said, you want it to taste like the ocean. And I'm sure everybody or a lot of people have fallen into the ocean and got a little too much water in their mouth. So that's sort of what that flavor is supposed to be like. So, so also as I'm doing this, I'm sort of getting my water going. I have my pot here going because I want to get it a little bit hot. I think it's really important to note that when cooking all meats, you want to get a nice little sear on it. That way it'll give you that flavor. And so the meat's going to go into this pan.
So you heat the pan before you even put the meat in it.
Heat the pan, and as you can see the pan's sort of hot, I've got the oil in it. And you can see the way the oil is sort of coating the pan, that it is nice and hot. You can see the smoke coming off of it. Now, the reason for that is because as soon as you put the meat in the pan, it's going to cool it right down. So you need it to be nice and hot. So that way it keeps its heat, and that way you can get a nice color on the beef. Another thing that I like to do that I think other chefs or some people don't do is I like to season my meat first a little bit. I feel like when you're starting to add your salt and pepper while it's in the pot, it sort of starts to sink to the bottom of the pot. And then you're gonna kind of get this like unwanted, like gravelly salt around the bottom of the pan. And then that's how you end up with something that can be too salty or too peppery. So I'll put a little bit of salt on. And then I have some fresh cracked pepper. What I do, and I don't expect people to do it at home, but I like to roast my peppercorns first before I crush them. And I attribute that to like building a house. You want to have a strong foundation, and one of the foundational things that you're putting in your food is pepper. So just giving it that extra roast gives it a little bit of extra flavor, makes it a little bit like, gives it more of an umph. So I like to just roast my pepper a bit. I'll mix it and incorporate the salt and pepper so it's mixed in properly. And I'll almost flatten it out to start. So it's like almost like a patty of beef. Obviously,
big
it's
hamburger, right?
like a big hamburger, but the shape doesn't really matter. But the reason why I'm doing it is because I want the most surface area on the hot pan. So the pan's hot, you can hear it kind of sizzling away. And so the water's going, the beef's going. So the next two things, which are probably the most important two things, are the onions and garlic. I think, obviously, when you think of a lot of Italian dishes and pastas, onions and garlic are giving them a lot of that flavor.
Absolutely.
So you can take whole garlic cloves, you can puree them, which a lot of people would do, that's fine. You can slice them nice and thin. I'm gonna just slice them nice and thin with a knife. I won't make you slice them like Goodfellas style with a razor blade. I think that even though it's probably effective, we won't do it that way this time. And so I'm just giving this meat just a little bit of a stir, because even though I want some color, I don't want it to brown up too much. So I'll be watching that as I'm prepping my onions and garlic. So sharp knife, always try to use a sharp knife. The number one reason why people cut themselves, why I have cooks that cut themselves, is because they have dull knives. So when you have a knife that does a lot of the work and you don't have to force your way through it, you don't cut yourself. But when you're fiddling and your knife isn't sharp, you're pushing it around and you're doing things that aren't natural, and that causes you.
So no butter knives when you're cutting the.
No butter knives when you're cutting. So I'll just do a little dice. I'm not too worried about it being super perfect. Bolognese is sort of a rustic dish, so it doesn't have to be too finite. But I mean,
You can use the word peasant style. That's really what I like.
peasant style. Yeah, I like to use the word rustic.
It's just politer, or more polite.
And like rustic's like this really funny word that a lot of chefs in fancy restaurants use for things not being too fine, and it's really just their fancy way of saying they've been lazy. It's their lazy way of doing it. So I like going with rustic, so it gives me an excuse to be a bit lazy, not put too much pressure on anything. So as you can see, I'm kind of just started getting to the point where we're getting this meat browned and cooked up. Our water's starting to boil, so I'll turn that down so it's ready to go.
Do you use round steak or something, minced steak, not hamburger? What do you use in spaghetti bolognese?
So I think the way we do it mostly in North America is with the ground beef.
Right.
That's what we're doing today. I actually really like a mix of pork and veal.
Right.
I think that's probably what would be most traditional, and the pork gives it a little bit of that extra fat content, and the veal sort of just gives it a little bit almost like a more of a pure flavor.
Yeah, but my wife won't let me eat veal because she thinks it's unkind to small calves, so it's out. It's got to be, older cows.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fair enough. Like I totally understand. I totally understand that.
I have certain non-culinary rules that apply to my eating habits, I'm afraid.
My wife is probably like a nightmare to be married to for most chefs, because she would consider anything that's not beef and chicken a weird meat. So we just eat beef and chicken at my house. So
That's really where I'm coming from pretty well.
yeah. So I mean, it is what it is. I understand that. So I get my fill of all the other stuff that I like when I'm at work or I'm out with the boys or whatever it is. So yeah. So I'm just slicing up this garlic pretty fine. I'm not making sure that it's super fine or too worried about it, but it's fine enough. One trick when using a knife, you want to have your hand far up on the blade. So usually my two fingers, my thumb and finger, are a bit on the blade. So you want to be high up so that way you have some control. The the further down you are, you don't have as much control, and that's another way you could cut yourself. So I do that, and always sort of try to tuck my thumb in behind my fingers, sort of gives you that space to not cut yourself. So that's a little trick,
Well,
I
my
guess.
technique is to have you do the cutting, you see, so it works out.
You will definitely not cut yourself
Absolutely,
if I'm doing
not
the
at this
cutting.
distance, not at this social distance.
Social distance cutting. It's great. So I'm getting close to where I want to be with this meat. And what I'm going to do is when I feel this meat's about ready, I'm going to do something that I think a lot of people don't do. And I'm going to take this meat off and I'm going to set it in a bowl and just sort of leave it in a bowl for a bit. And the reason why I'm going to do that, because most people would just dump their onions and garlic in, I'm going to do that because I'm going to use a little bit of that beef fat that's in there, and I'm going to put this onions and garlic in there. And as soon as I add the onions and garlic to this pan, I'm going to add just a little bit of salt. And what the salt does is it takes all the liquid that's sitting inside the onions and garlic and sort of forces it to come out into the pan. And I'll swish it around, and it'll season that pan with an onion and garlic flavor and really coat that pan, because we're going to build the sauce in there. And like I said, think of cooking like building a house. So the foundation of this house really is what's going to be in the bottom of this pan. So as we're adding things into it, it's taking on that flavor that we're building in the pan. So I like where I'm at really with the beef. It's not all the way cooked through, but I would say it's like 85%, 90% cooked through. So I'll just go on over here, I'll bring the bowl out, and I'll just sort of dump it in, and you'll see all the liquid. So that liquid's all flavor. So that'll be great to mix into the sauce afterwards.
Looks good as is, that's great.
Yeah, as is, some tortilla chips and a... So, yeah, so I'll put this to the side. We'll let the pan get a little bit hot again, and I'll just add a little bit more olive oil. And now you can use whatever oil you want. Because we're doing Italian, I've decided to use a little bit of olive oil from Italy. But
What other kinds are there?
canola oil, vegetable oil, grapeseed oil, peanut oil. There's a lot of different ones you can use, and a lot of the reasons why chefs use different oils is because they have a different like burn rate as far as like how hot you can get it without it starting to smoke. So olive oil is actually really low, and a lot of purists don't like cooking with olive oil because they think once you get olive oil too hot, it really starts to lose its flavor. So I do think that that's true, but in some cases, like when I'm making Italian food or sauces, I like to have that that olive oil in there.
Absolutely.
So I have
It's not Italian if it doesn't have olive oil in it. I'm a purist from that sense.
Agreed. So I have the onions and garlic in here. Now you can put as much or as little onions in here as you want, depending on what you decide if you like onions or garlic. So
I love onions, they just don't like me.
yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people actually. So as you can see, I just put a little bit of salt in there just to kind of get those juices coming out of the onions and garlic.
It looks great already. All this stuff looks great already.
And I'm going to turn it down just a little bit here, just so you're kind of sweating them. You're not frying them or sautéing them. You're just giving them this sort of translucent bit of flavor to them. Now,
well, this is so fine, you know. I'm a master of the overkill. I burn everything, you know, if I am going to cook anything. I'm talking about the microwave. That's where I do my cooking.
So it's a thing that I've actually told a lot of my cooks through the years is these are dials. They're not switches. You don't switch it and it doesn't go full blast on. You can kind of control it. And like, don't get me wrong, high heat, there's a time and place for everything. Like if we were making risotto right now, I'd have it blaring because you really want that high heat, but some things need to just be finessed a little bit. So another thing that I'll add to this around this time is I'm gonna add some thyme. If I had fresh basil, I would pick it and I would just have the basil stalks along with this and just throw them right in. Now some people will pick them and chop them so that they're nice and fine. But what I like to do is I throw it in so that way you get the flavor. And right at the end, I take my tongs and I pick them right out. So there shouldn't be any thyme there at all, but you'll have the flavor of it.
It'll look bad in the film, you know, pulling thyme out of my mouth. So.
Exactly. So we'll pick it right out. And that's what I would do as well with just the basil stalks, if that was the way that I was going to go with the basil. And then I would reserve that for later. And you can also do that with the thyme. You could reserve some for later and use it as a little bit of garnish. I personally would rather just have the flavor inside, and maybe we'll garnish with something else. So this is around the time where people that want to add wine, you could add wine. Some people like to add white wine. Some people like to add red wine. Whenever I'm doing anything tomato-based, I like to use red wine. Now, I'm not sure if this is extremely factual, but I kind of feel like when you're using red wine, especially in a meat sauce, it gives it more of that like New York style, like it's a gravy and not a not an Italian tomato sauce. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that more gravy feel. So I would add tomato sauce, but we're not, or sorry, not tomato sauce, red wine. But today we're omitting the red wine just for some dietary restriction. Another thing that you could add is some chili flakes. Do you like heat?
I like hot chili and chili peppers. I often have that in spaghetti.
Okay, so since you like them, we'll put a little bit in there just to sort of get it moving along. And the reason why you're cooking those out as well is it's like anything. Once the heat hits it, once the oils and like liquids from the onions and garlic hit it, it'll sort of start to leach out in the pan and give you that flavor. So it'll help your sauce taste good.
I'm really looking forward to this already. It's very exciting.
Yeah, well,
Sure
hopefully.
beats open a can.
Yeah, that's what we do at home. We just open a can. This is just all for the
Is that
camera.
what chefs do when they go home? Yeah, give me a can of spaghetti.
That's actually a really funny question that I've gotten a lot, and I've heard other chefs and like some well-known chefs around the city been asked, and a lot of people or a lot of chefs will say, "Well, I just go home and open a can of chicken soup," or because they're so tired from cooking all day.
Absolutely, I can understand that.
Yeah, like a lot of the time, my wife does a lot of cooking at home because I don't feel like cooking when I'm at home.
Yes.
Because I'm doing it all day. Okay, so if I was to add the wine or add another liquid, I would have added it and I would have let it come down a little bit. But since that isn't sort of what we're doing today, we're going to start adding the tomatoes. But as you can see, we have the nice liquid here from the
beautiful.
meat. So that's going to go in now. You can sort of hear it start sizzling there. And that'll just, again, just add to the flavors that are going to be in that pan.
I noticed your water is really boiling there. When do you put the spaghetti itself in, or is there a time?
It's as soon as I get the tomatoes in, I'm going to put the pasta in. So I don't really have a cheat code for cooking pasta. I really follow the instructions because depending on the manufacturer you get it from, they always know best. We do a lot of fresh pasta here. The rule for fresh pasta for me is as soon as you put it in, it starts floating, it's done. It takes minutes, like a couple.
Right.
But with this dry pasta, I have a nice dried durum wheat semolina flour pasta mix. Package said about 10, so I'll put it in. We'll really stir it, make sure it doesn't stick together, and we'll kind of do it like the at-home way. We'll try a piece, see if it's done as much as we like it, and then we'll pull it off.
Outstanding.
So,
Now, what do you make your tomato sauce of? What's that comprised of?
So what I have here is just from a can plum tomatoes.
Right.
So I've taken those plum tomatoes, and the things I don't like are seeds and skin. Sometimes I feel like they're unappealing, or you get a piece in your mouth and it just sort of, the texture really doesn't feel right. So what I do is I pour mine into a strainer and I mash them, almost like you would think somebody like mashes grapes for wine. And I mash all the nice juices out, but then it keeps all the stuff that I don't want in the strainer, and that's sort of
So
what
it's
I'm making.
plum tomatoes you buy.
Yeah, plum tomatoes. So I'll start adding some tomato sauce in, depending, and I think a lot of people have different ideas of their meat and tomato ratio. Some people like more meat, some people like more tomatoes. So we'll sort of just like go for the consistency that we like. And part of the reason why we haven't put the pasta in yet is like, I think it serves the sauce best to kind of go a little bit. Now, I know people, my wife included, when she makes her bolognese, she'll have it on the stove all day and sort of start. And I do recommend that. That's great. But what we're doing here is more of a quick one, and I think that we can get the flavors that we're looking for with the process that we're taking in a shorter period of time. So, I mean, if we had all day to sit around and talk football or something like that, we could sit around and do that. But since we're
My wife doesn't like to sit around and talk football anymore. I don't know why.
yeah, my wife doesn't like that either. Doesn't like that either. So I'll get that started going, sort of getting it to a simmer. I'm gonna add a little bit more tomato. I think it needs just a bit more. And so it'll be sort of like the pasta too. I'll just taste it as we go on. I have a bunch of tasting spoons here we can taste, see what we think we need. I have some sugar here. I'm not a big fan of putting sugar in tomato-based pasta sauces, but a lot of people are. So my sort of way to get around it is if I feel like it needs a little bit of sugar, I have it, but I'll kind of make a game time decision. Sometimes the process that you cook it, some people add carrots to sweeten it up instead of using the sugar. So we'll sort of see where we're at and see if we're feeling the sugar, and if so, we'll put some in as we're going.
This is an odd question, but don't tomatoes have a amount of sugar in it already, or am I thinking of?
Yep, no, they for sure do. All fruit and vegetables have a certain amount of sugar or
Right.
sugar content in them. So, but tomatoes are also very acidic. So people are putting the sugar in to cut down the acidity
Right.
because they don't like that acidic, like the back when it hits your throat, that acidity. So, I think that's more the reason for the sugar. A lot of Italians will add tomato paste to this process. I don't add tomato paste. The restaurant I was the chef at before here, the general manager was Italian, and his mother used to tell him all the time when she came for dinner that her pasta sauce was white, even though it looked like this, but that was an Italian thing for her saying that she knew that I wasn't putting tomato paste in it. You have to put tomato paste in your pasta sauce or else it's white.
It's hard when you come up against purists, and particularly when you have in a culture that I think every Italian woman, if you say someone else made really great spaghetti, that's an insult.
Yeah,
No matter how good this is, I cannot say this is the best spaghetti I've ever tasted. I tell you this in advance because my wife makes the best spaghetti.
Yeah.
And this is a self-preservation thing. I get no more spaghetti if I don't give Dorothy top billing on spaghetti.
Well, also,
but
too-
I'm sure this will be a good runner-up. I'm looking forward to it.
Also, too, like if you really do enjoy your wife's spaghetti and that's what you're used to, nothing tastes as good as nostalgia, right? The nostalgia of having a home-cooked meal, all the good times you guys had eating that. It's really hard to go up against that, right? And that's a lot when it comes to food in general. I feel like the better time people are having when they're eating, the better the food is.
Well, it's reinforced with me because any time my wife thinks I've had a difficult day, I come home and I've got spaghetti bolognese. So that's the way to just calm me down and feel good about the world.
That's a lot better. Usually when my wife thinks I have a difficult day, when I walk through, she just tells me to suck it up. So at least you're getting fed.
Well, it depends on the day. I'm not saying that's every day, but
Okay, so we've got this simmering away. This is rapidly boiling, which I think is right where we want to be. I'm going to put just a little bit of olive oil in the water.
okay.
The reason why I'm doing that is because pasta likes to stick together as it's cooking.
Right.
One thing that really stops pasta from sticking together is oil. So I'm just putting a little bit in just to
Right,
sort of like
right.
lubricate everything up. So we just have spaghetti here. A lot of the time, depending, so this is a little bit short because as you can see, this was packaged bent,
Right.
but a lot will be packaged straight. So a lot of the time, the first thing that I'll do, and here's a tip for people at home, if you don't want to make a mess, is I'll take a rag, I'll lay it out, I'll put my long noodles in it,
Right.
I'll roll it up, and I'll snap it.
Right.
Now, the reason why I do that is because if you don't do it in the rag and you snap it, you're going to end up with spaghetti dried
Spaghetti all over the
pieces.
place.
And then my dogs will be chewing on dried spaghetti all
Yes.
night, and that's not great. So in it goes. Also, with the snapping, it helps it fit into the pot better. As you can see, it's
Right,
kind of
right.
overhanging the pot. But we'll give it a good stir and just sort of keep it going. And so I'm just timing where we are here on the timer, and I'm going to start really checking it around, the 10-minute mark, the 8-minute mark. I'll start
Right.
really having a look at it. But one thing that we're going to be conscious of is just to keep stirring because, again, this is in a smaller pot because we're in a little satellite area kitchen here. So if you're at home and you have a bigger pots are always better, but I thought we'd be able to get away with this one today.
Well, it smells absolutely great.
Yeah, well, let's hope. And I mean, if we taste good and decide it doesn't taste, or if we taste it and decide it doesn't taste good, we just won't tell the people, right?
Yeah, what am I supposed to say? That's terrible? Of course, it's going to
Yeah.
be great. I can tell that just from the aroma of the
Okay, so
sauce.
this is around the time where I'll start tasting. And I'm an over-taster. I get mad at my staff all the time because I feel like people should be tasting their food throughout the process. The problem with that is when you're cooking at home is by the time I'm done tasting what I'm making 10 times, however many times it is, when the meal's done, I don't feel like eating it anymore because I've just tried it so much. It's like that pot of chili sitting on the stove on Sunday and you've dipped into it a bunch of times to see how it is, and when it's time to eat, everybody else is eating and I'm not. So
I have similar experiences when I was bar manager in our fraternity in university.
see, so bar manager, that almost counts as the industry, right?
Almost.
Almost counts.
It wasn't quite as scientific as the work you're doing here.
So I just tried a little bit. I'll give you a little bit to try too. One thing that I can say from the start is I don't think it needs more salt as of right now. I think we're doing pretty good salt-wise.
Terrific.
Try not to get any on your white shirt there.
No, I'm going to do that. That's terrific. Lovely.
So another thing that we can do too, and I don't do it as much, but bay leaves, now that it's sort of boiling a bit, and I could have put these in a bit sooner if I wasn't so busy having a good time talking to
There you go.
But
Sorry about the bay leaves.
I'm going to put 2 bay leaves in here just to give it a little bit more enhancement of flavor. And for me personally, and you tell me what you think, I would put a little bit more of this fresh black pepper in there. I think that it could take
Perfect.
a little bit more.
Perfect. You know better than I. I'm not that sensitive in any areas, particularly food.
I think everybody just sort of likes what they like, right? So we'll
Absolutely.
just make sure. So you were saying at the top that it's been 40 years now.
Amazing.
So how did that all start? What was sort of the process for that?
Well, it's really fun. Well, I've been in the investment business for 55. My father was in the meat packing business. And there's only one thing I knew for sure that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go into the meat packing business. And my brother-in-law, to-be, invited me to see this brokerage firm. I think it was about 18. And it looked nice. It's an ongoing puzzle. And I thought, well, this is kind of fun. And people dress nicely. And it didn't smell too badly like a meat packing plant. So that sort of got me to move in that direction. And I graduated from McGill in economics and philosophy, which makes me functionally useless in the real world. But I ended up in the investment business, and I worked for several large firms. And there were certain things I wanted to try. It's like anything. I wanted to try, and so I started our firm 40 years ago, just to do things a little bit differently that I thought might meet client needs a little bit better. And we were able to do some of that, and I was very grateful. I had wonderful people join me, great clients. It's been an amazing, amazing adventure. And 40 years, you encompass incredible diversity of markets, events. I mean, even now, brand new for everybody, this COVID. So it's just, it goes on and on. So, wars, famine, crises, financial crises, 18% interest rates, all kinds of experience, and trying to jockey through that. So it's an ongoing puzzle, which I've always enjoyed, and it's kept my interest and indeed my affection. I like what I do. And,
Well, that's important, right? Liking what you do every day. If you don't like what you do, it ends up making life really long getting up every day and having to go to work, right?
Absolutely. I mean, occasionally people say, well, you ever thought of retiring? Well, doing what? If you like what you do, it's not a job. And I get the chance to talk to my friends all day, every day, my clients, people I've known many, many, many years, and it's wonderful. And it's an ongoing puzzle. It's a mental challenge.
The friends thing's important, right? You really, you don't realize how many friends you make through work and how much you enjoy their time, even though you're working with them.
Yep.
It's almost like you're hanging out with friends sometimes, right? So that's great.
Well, it is. I mean, it's either this or feed pigeons, So, so I love it. I love what I do, and it's interesting. A client of ours said to one of our advisors about a year or so ago, and he was a retired lawyer, and he was about 80, and he said, I would give everything I have if I could go back to work again.
Wow.
Because we need to be challenged. We need to be with people. We need that interstimulation. Even cooking, this is, again, it's new for me. This is great.
Yeah, well, cooking can be fun, right? And it, depending on what level you're at or how comfortable you feel, even for home cooks, it's really like this creative outlet that you can have a lot of
Yes.
fun with. So,
Yes.
I mean, that's sort of what got me into it, or kept me in it, I should say. So,
Did you study being a chef in school, or did it become through apprentice work and working?
oh, I'd say that I kind of took the back alleyway into cooking, as far as I didn't do anything very glamorous. My mother taught piano when I was younger, and one of her students was the son of a chef at the nicest restaurant in Brampton. So you can
Okay.
take that for however you want.
Well, there's some good restaurants in Brampton. I
Well,
remember that. There were a
It
couple.
actually ended up being a really good restaurant, and the guy that was a chef there was really good. And just sort of with my background, needed to get a job very young. So when I was 16, since knowing him through my mom teaching his child piano, I kind of got in as a dishwasher, and just sort of the natural progression of that is that you want to go from being a dishwasher, well, this isn't very fun. What that guy's doing looks more fun, and then you get to that job, and well, what that guy's doing looks more fun, and kind of just sort of got into cooking that way, and then just sort of like progressed from there. worked at some of the nicer restaurants up in the Caledon area. Was lucky enough to do an apprenticeship at a really nice place, and sort of move up to Muskoka and work the resort circuit up there. And
Right.
After about 4 or 5 years of doing that, I thought, maybe I'll go to school and get my papers and make it official. And I went to school, and I was there for about a month and was like, you know what? I don't know, not for me. So they give you an option to challenge your cooking test. So I challenged my test, passed my test, and got my papers without having to finish going through school. And
Well, school can sometimes be tedious, as most of us know.
well, I made the mistake of already being in the restaurant industry for so long.
Yes, yes.
A lot of the stuff they were teaching me were things that I had been doing on a
Absolutely.
daily basis.
Absolutely.
And I was lucky enough to have a lot of friends in the restaurant industry. So as I progressed and moved on and had questions, they would just teach me like a teacher would teach you. So I just sort of learned that way, and worked my way up, and now I'm here at Vantage. It's been 10 years. I never ever would have thought it would have been 10 years.
Well, this
but
is a
here
great
we are.
venue. And Liz, who's our marketing manager, had her wedding here. In fact, you
did.
were the chef, I believe,
I
at the
was.
wedding, and it was incredible. It was incredible.
Oh,
So,
good. I'm glad. Yeah, I remember Liz saying that everything was great, so I'm glad that it was.
well, it was. And I remember, and I'm a terrible cook myself, but I know what I like, and it was excellent. Everything was excellent. It was really a stand-up affair, so congratulations. And I know
Oh, thank you.
Liz was very, very happy using this venue, and certainly having you prepare the food for it.
That's the thing with food is everybody knows what they like, right? That like bare minimum, whether you know about food or you know about cooking, everybody knows what they like. So that's a real challenge as a chef too, because you really have to. It's what right do I have to walk into a dining room if somebody's unhappy with the food and tell them that they're wrong? I can't tell them that they need to like something, right? So it's
There used to be a restaurant in Toronto called, I think it was Melanie's. I can't remember the name of it. It was near Women's College Hospital, and it was French, Parisian. And Parisian chefs can be very difficult on their guests. And I didn't eat my vegetables.
Oh, no.
And he came over with the chef's hat on it, and this discussion, I thought it was a joke at first. But it really escalated, and we ended up shouting at each other because I didn't finish I said, my mother made me finish my vegetables. But he took his job really serious.
a lot of people do that. French people in general like to take their vegetables very seriously, and
Well, this fellow did.
yeah, and hats off to them. Like I do understand like a lot of the time in North America, I think we take vegetables for granted, but they really do a good job of highlighting those, but under no circumstance should he be coming out into the dining room and doing that. Luckily, I think for everybody, the restaurant industry has changed a lot. Like you would never get something like that here at Vantage venues. And like another thing that you would hear, and I experienced it coming up in the industry is, everybody's seen what Gordon Ramsay's made his millions off of yelling at people on TV, right? So, I mean, that's a reality in the restaurant industry, and I think a lot of cooks, when they're coming up, are getting yelled at, and they can't wait till they can become chefs so that they can yell at people. But I remembered when I was younger how much I disliked it, so I couldn't wait till the day came where I could be a chef, so that way I didn't have to yell at people, that you could do it in a normal way. And luckily, I wasn't the only person that thought like that, because it seems like the industry is really heading in that direction.
Yes.
So it's a lot more user-friendly and easy to get into.
The best chef story, there's a book called Finger Licking Good by Colonel Saunders about, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he got into some altercation with the chef, and the chef took a butcher knife and was slashing at him. He backed out of the kitchen. He was holding him off with a chair, and a couple got up and said, "Oh, you're Colonel Saunders, how do you do?" So he's shaking hands with them in one hand and holding the chef off with the chair. And one of these surrealistic moments sort of thing. But that was my favorite chef story.
I've definitely, through the years, seen some crazy chefs acting crazy. I've seen chefs throwing things, whole frozen ducks at people. I've myself been hit by a chef in the face with a piece of salmon. So yeah, there's definitely some stories out there.
Cooked or cold?
A raw piece of fish, yeah. So we're getting close on the pasta, and all I'm doing is taking small bites and sort of going for that al dente feel.
Right.
But not too much. I feel like sometimes people take it a little too serious, and then they're eating a large bowl of undercooked pasta that they don't actually enjoy, but they think that's the way they're supposed to eat it. Now, it is supposed to be a little al dente, and there is supposed to be a little bit of a bite, but I'm just trying not to get too carried away with that.
Yeah, I kind of like it softer myself, but that's probably what I'm used to. But
Okay.
No, it doesn't matter.
And we can do it that way, because
You're
as
the chef. I can go home and I'm not going to criticize my wife under any circumstances. I just say this was almost as good as yours.
Perfect. That's good enough for me. So we're just sort of waiting on the pasta here. So, and this is good. The waiting's kind of good because it's giving the sauce time to sort of just absorb and mellow out and get all those flavors into it. I mean, I think it tastes pretty good.
Well, sauce, is it the same? For example, sometimes soup, when it's an extra day old, or stew, tastes better.
Always. That's and same
is
with
the same with
sauce,
sauce?
of course. Always better the next day. Yeah, always. Soup especially, stews especially, they do always taste better the next day.
Yeah.
That's why sometimes you'll go to some restaurants and it's actually a funny play, but they'll have two soups on the menu, and one soup will be called today daily soup, and the other one will be called yesterday's soup. And yesterday's soup probably tastes
Always
better.
go to yesterday's soup.
Yeah, yesterday's
Absolutely.
soup probably tastes better. But hopefully they're telling the truth, and yesterday's soup isn't soup from 6 days ago. But
I remember a comedian said, you know, we were always served leftovers. Nobody ever knew what happened to the original meal.
yeah, well, that was a reality for me as a kid too. If I didn't eat my dinner, that's what I was getting the next night.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, leftovers for sure. So, right before we start plating, me and my wife always have a debate about bolognese because she loves bolognese. She likes putting the pasta in the bowl and then just sort of saucing the top, but I like mixing my pasta in the sauce so it gets coated nicely. So
Right.
whenever we have bolognese, her and the kids, because she just decided that she's going to dictate what the kids like, they get their pasta with the sauce ladled on top, and I mix mine separately.
Right.
So how do you like yours? Because that's the way we're going to plate ours.
Either way is fine with me. My wife typically puts the spaghetti and then the sauce on top of the spaghetti, but I'm happy. I'm always grateful to be fed. So anything is fine with me. Whatever you'd like to do is great with me.
So what we'll do is we'll do it my wife's way, the way that seems to be the way that you're getting, and I just won't tell her when I go home. I'll tell her that you liked it my way.
Okay,
so
good
that
enough.
way I have
Good
another
enough.
person on my
You
side.
should handle this like a man with a lie.
Yeah, exactly right. Any little thing you can get to hold over them, right? So we're
This
getting
looks
close.
absolutely great. It smells wonderful.
Yeah.
If you're doing this at home, I hope you're really enjoying it because it's really, really.
So we're getting close here. You can tell sort of by the way the noodles are hanging, the way they look. I don't even need to taste that to know that we're ready to go.
We're in business.
We're in business.
So what do I do? Put the plates down here and
Yes, sir. So I just have a little thing rigged up down here that nobody can see where I'm just sort of pouring that hot water.
dumping it all over the carpet. It's really cool.
Yeah, just onto the floor. Yeah, I'm wearing rubber boots. I'm wearing my fishing boots today. So a little bit of oil. I'm just going to give it a little bit. And again, the reason being it just sort of helps keep the noodles apart. Olive oil is kind of delicious, so I mean,
Right.
it doesn't hurt to have that. So there's tons of different ways you can do this. You could use one of those big forks that you would think about cutting meat with, and you can sort of start spinning.
Right.
So that way it kind of spins up for you.
I've never watched this part. I don't know how my wife does that.
Okay, so this is a little trick that I do, is I just sort of start in the pan, and I'm sort of spinning with the tongs, and see it's sort of starting to come together.
Right.
Now it's not going to be perfect, but what it's going to do is it sort of helps just get, so that way it kind of sits up in the bowl a little bit, right?
Right.
Just to give it some height, because I feel like with presentation, and it doesn't matter how old this technique is, it seems like it's kind of always stood true in cooking, is a little bit of height is just always more visually appealing than something sitting flat in the bottom of the bowl.
I'm just happy something's in the plate.
So, and it's just a little bit of spin, that's all. So that sits up like that, and that's sort of how we do that. And then, sort of back to what we were talking about before, I don't chop my herbs up. I kind of throw them in whole. So right at the end, I just take them out. So look, now the sauce will have the flavor from the bay leaves, from the thyme, but now you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, I hate getting a bay leaf in spaghetti sauce or anything. I don't have that at home, but when I'm out, I just hate getting, sticks and twigs and
Well,
whatever.
exactly, and it kind of just throws off your whole meal. And also, these things pack a lot of flavor. So if you get one of these in your mouth and you bite into it, it sort of warps your palate because now it's been overwhelmed with that flavor. So we got that all out right now. So if you were wanting to put fresh herbs in, we're not going that direction today, but if we were, I would do that now, or I would do it after we spoon on the top and just put something fresh.
Right.
I don't like the idea of putting in like big sticks, like you said, or whatever, that you just put in the top so it looks fancy. I don't think you should put anything on a plate that you can't eat.
Absolutely.
That's just a personal
Absolutely.
thing for me. So my wife would be proud.
You're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
There you go.
You can show her this.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Ed burn the evidence of the video after this, so I never have to cop to it. So that would be sort of how I would do it, just like this. Pretty basic bolognese, but I mean, I think that was the point.
That looks wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Now, do you like cheese on your bolognese or no cheese?
Generally, no cheese. It's my idea of a diet.
Your idea of a diet. Okay, so I'll show you a second bowl, and I'll show you just a nice way, a little tool that you can use at home. It's really cheap, and I found over the years, even in some of the restaurants that I've been the chef of, people just really like the presentation of it. So it could be a little tip to those at home that want to add some cheese. So just doing it, giving a little bit of height, giving it the twist. Also, here, I guess another little tip is if you are ever cooking, sort of similar to the knife, when you're grabbing spoons and things, grab them closer to the base.
Okay.
Gives you more control, and that way you can kind of put things exactly where you want to put them instead of worrying about slopping them everywhere. I guess the problem with me saying that on camera is if I slop something somewhere now, I'm going to look silly. But
By the way, speaking of that, I'm very happy to have my apron here, so I look as if I know what I'm doing.
I think you do know what you're doing. I think you're
outfits are
holding it
very
on me.
important. You know, the appearances are everything.
It's all about keeping up appearances.
Absolutely.
So, nice tool you can buy at home is just a little rasp. Really nice. Really great for a lot of things. I use them for citrus peel. A lot of citrus peel in a lot of cooking I do gives a lot of flavor.
Or taking off a layer of skin, any of those things.
Taking off a layer of skin. But when you do it like this, maybe even around this time too, it almost gives you the sense of like a little bit of snow, like a snow-topped bowl of pasta that Florian's probably going to enjoy once the cameras go off. And he's giving me the thumbs up back there, so that's great. And if you've ever eaten it,
That's a lot of cheese.
I was just going to say, if you've ever eaten at Radical Road or Lob Toronto, which would be the other two restaurants I'm also the chef at, this is what our meatball dishes look like, and people always say that's a lot of cheese, and that's sort of what I'm going for. So if people are into cheese and into sort of like big flavor, that's sort of what we're going for. That's sort of what I like to do at home.
What kind of cheese do you use?
So that is Parmesan or Reggiano.
Okay.
That would be one of the big two. Parmesans, that's a really, really good cheese.
Terrific.
And it'll give you that extra little salt content. So I'm not sure how willing you are to mess up your white shirt, but if you want to...
I have an apron, don't care.
You have an apron. And apparently a really good trick to clean your ties, so we're doing pretty good.
Absolutely.
So that would be the end of the bolognese, and I mean, you can do lots of different garnishes with that. You could put rapini, you could put the fresh herbs, like I said. Another little trick is you can add a little butter at the end to give some shine if that's what you were looking for. My Italian general manager didn't like that trick either, so I sort of stopped doing that. So that's sort of what we're looking at. And also, like, if I like the idea of the cheese, but if you wanted to tidy it up, you could give it a little wipe, and then there you go.
Isn't that wonderful? Now, can I start eating this?
Please do.
Okay, well, God bless us all, and I hope everyone else enjoys their meal. And let me just have a taste of this so I can give you my...
Your fake honest opinion?
My fake honest opinion.
Give it a little twirl. Save some for my buddy Flo back there.
It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Almost as good as my wife's.
And that was what I was going for. You can't mess with perfection, so...
That's outstanding. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your cooking. It's been fun for us, fun for me to watch this, and particularly I don't have to do anything. I just stand around with the apron, which is kind of cool. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being our friends and our clients over all these years. It's just been a wonderful experience. It's been great fun, just like this. So All the best to you. All the best in 21. It's got to be better than 2020, let me tell you. Thank you.
Thank you.